Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Wednesday. I hope the day is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. I say that and I'm pretty sure it's probably not going too well, to be honest, because of what happened last night. Didn't quite go to plan, did it? All the build-up, all the anticipation, and it all just fell a little bit flat. Arsenal losing 1-0 to PSG in the Champions League semi-final first leg at the Emirates, and they have it all to do now next week ahead of that game in Paris. But trying to look at positives this morning. It is not over. It could have been worse. The tie is still alive. It's going to take a real monumental effort from the team over in Paris. But, you know, if you can go to the Bernabeu and win, you can go to Paris and win. So you've got to try and look at it in a positive way, I suppose. But on the whole, it was a really disappointing night, a disappointing result, largely a disappointing performance. Some individual performances weren't great. The atmosphere was a bit flat. It just didn't quite live up to all the billing, did it? So we're going to talk about that today in today's show. Obviously, we'll reflect. We'll go over the big talking points from the game. We'll look at what Mikel had to say afterwards. I'll run through my player ratings. Got lots of reaction from you guys as well that I wanted to get through and share. After what was, as I said, it was just a disappointing night. Even it couldn't have started any worse, could it? I mean, the build up to it, and I was up and around the sort of ground from 3 o'clock onwards, and you could feel the anticipation. The atmosphere was building. You know, got to the ground really early. So I've never seen the place so crowded so early on. It was absolutely rammed. I think I went to the Tollington pub at about 5 o'clock, thinking people might be starting to arrive by now, and it was like one in, one out at the door. Everyone was up there early doors. Everyone went into the stadium early doors. It was bouncing in there, you know, walking through the concourses. It was buy one, get one free for a beer offer, you know, so everyone was piling in there, drinking, having fun. The atmosphere was great. You get out into the ground. I thought the atmosphere pre-match was unbelievable. It was so loud. Everyone was in their seats early. And then it just fizzled out. I mean, the early goal it was like someone had just popped a balloon with a pin when that early goal went in. And I just think the whole night never really recovered from it. It kind of sucked the life out of us a little bit. And could we have done more as fans? Maybe so. I have to say, I didn't come away from the ground last night thinking, oh, the atmosphere was awful. But there's been lots of talk about it today, that the atmosphere is very flat. It wasn't really something in my mind as I was leaving the ground last night. Like, oh, that was really bad atmosphere. I felt like it was still an okay atmosphere, but clearly it didn't come across that way for people watching at home. And there seems to be lots and lots of narrative about it. But I do think that early goal, and not just the early goal, just the first 20 minutes or so when PSG was so good. And you've got to credit PSG. Obviously, we're going to talk about Arsenal and what went wrong potentially in the show, but you've got to credit PSG. They're the best team I've seen this season by a distance. And I know Arsenal beat them earlier in the season. We've talked about that in the build up to the game, and we were hoping that could be very beneficial for Arsenal. But this was a PSG team that looked completely different. Fair play to them than the side we saw back in October. They were so good. And that first 20 minutes, Arsenal just couldn't really get near them. Obviously, they got the goal. I think that brought the atmosphere down. It brought the players down. It boosted PSG. And then they just knocked the ball around so comfortably in that first 20-25 minutes. And you could just feel all that excitement that had built up around the day just sort of drain away. And then it was a case of, right, we're in for a real struggle here because this lot are very good, which is what you would expect in a semi-final. I did think Arsenal improved as the half wore on. Mikel spoke afterwards about how they made a little tweak. He wouldn't say what it was, but he made a little tweak after like 20 minutes or so, and that sort of brought Arsenal back into the game, and I think it did. They were better as we got towards half-time. Obviously, we had the big moment when Martinelli went through right on I think it was the clock had just hit 45 minutes and it just gone into stoppage time when Lewis Skelly played him in. Very good save from Donnarumma. It was very similar to sort of Martinelli's chance in the Bernabeu, which he stuck away, but it was a really good save from Donnarumma, pushing it wide. Could Martinelli have done better? Potentially so, yes, but it was a very good save. And Donnarumma's just so gigantic when you're facing up to him one-on-one. There was a couple of other sort of slight openings, but when the halftime whistle went at 1-0 to PSG, I think it was very difficult to argue that they didn't deserve that lead at that point. The second half obviously could have started so well. The offside goal, I mean, I have to say, I didn't even celebrate this goal. It was all very weird. When it came in, I just felt, and I know the flag didn't go up, but I just felt it was going to get ruled out. And it was just one of those goals in the stadium where it went in, but I was just thinking this is going to get ruled out here. I wasn't sure if it was for a foul or whatever. I could see that PSG were really adamant that it shouldn't be a goal, and it was just a really sort of strange couple of minutes. It was offside, no doubt about it, which is a shame. It was a good header from Marino, but he was offside. But then you had the really, really big moment, and one of the few times we really saw Rice be able to drive at PSG because he was having to play in the sixth role because of Thomas Partey's suspension. We just didn't see that enough from Declan Rice. He couldn't just really drive at them. And when he did, especially in this instance, when he set up Trossard's chance, it was a brilliant run by him. And this is a fantastic save from Donnarumma. If the Martinelli one was maybe more on the poor side of finishing, I thought Trossard, he hit it so well. It was swerving away from the goalkeeper. It was on his left foot and he hit it so well. He drilled it. It's just a fabulous save from Donnarumma, who's had an unbelievable campaign in the Champions League so far, to put that wide. And, that was the big moment really for Arsenal in the second half. They didn't really go anywhere, get anywhere near as close as that again from that point onwards. And obviously the last 20 minutes, PSG really came into it, had a couple of chances on the breakaway, which they should have done better with. Whether either of them would have counted if they were very, very tight to being offside, Barcola's and then Ramos's as well. But, Arsenal got away with it there in that last 20 minutes because it easily could have get at least 2-0 rather than 1-0. And if you're 2-0 down going to Paris, then you're in real trouble. 1-0 is going to be hard enough, but 2-0 is going to be would be a huge uphill task for them. So that Arsenal did get away with it. I think PSG will sort of be a little bit disappointed that they didn't take at least one of those chances late on. But on the whole, they were good, PSG. I don't think Arsenal were terrible by any means. I mean, you look at the stats from the game, that it doesn't paint a terrible picture for Arsenal against a very, very good PSG side. They easily could have got something out of this game, Arsenal, but equally they could have lost by more. So, but you look at the stats there, 1.65 XG for Arsenal to 1.114 for PSG. Very even in terms of shots. PSG just edging it in terms of shots, but Arsenal just edging it in terms of shots on target. Possession was pretty even as well. But again, I said it in the build up to the game. I wrote a piece on my website yesterday that talked about it, that Arteta in Champions League especially, he always says about, these games at the very highest level are determined by how efficient you are in both boxes. And PSG were more efficient in both boxes than Arsenal, where you had a goalkeeper who in the big moments came up clutch for them. And obviously they got the goal. Not the cleanest of strikes by Dembele, kind of shinned it a little bit, but it ends up in the back of the net. And that's the key thing for them. And I think Arsenal look at that goal, be a little bit disappointed in kind of how easy PSG got in down the left-hand side, and Dembele was left a little bit marked. Rice went over to sort of double up on Kvaratskhelia with Timber, and that kind of left Dembele a little bit free. There was no, Marino didn't really track back to sort of try and cover for Rice heading over there. So I'm sure they'll be looking at that a little bit after the game, sort of wondering if they could have done anything more. But yeah, it's just a tough one to take. I think we were all so excited, weren't we? I certainly was. And you just felt you needed to take something over to Paris. To be losing, to be trailing after the first leg at home to go to Paris. It's just against this PSG team who, just look very, very good. Very good. It's going to be really difficult, but it's not over. It is not over. And I think that is the most important thing to realize. As disappointed as we are this morning, it is not over. So, it is only half time. Mikel was speaking about that when he was asked about the performance. This is what he had to say. We're at half-time, and my message is exactly the same following us beating Real Madrid 3-0 at home, that we have to go to Paris now and win the game. We are more than capable of doing it because I saw two very good teams with margins that are so small. They had efficiency in front of the goal, and their keeper made as well a difference to see the result that we've seen tonight. When you score a goal and concede one, you have to. But we did a lot of things very, very well. We had a spell in the first half, and the game had phases. The first 15 to 20 minutes, especially them scoring so early in a great combination, playing with the margins that are so small. The finishing was unbelievable. And then we had especially one issue that we corrected after 15 to 20 minutes, and we sustained that for the rest of the game, which I think turned the game around. If you want to win the Champions League final, you have to do something special, and we're going to have to do something special in Paris to be there. And that's what it is going to take for Arsenal now. It is going to take something very, very special. I think I saw a stat, only two teams have come back to win a Champions League semi-final or a European Cup semi-final having been trailing after the first leg at home. And that was Spurs when they did it against Ajax a few years back. And I think Ajax did it themselves in like the 90s or something like that. So that's the sort of weight of history that is against Arsenal. But this is a team that we saw go to Real Madrid and play really well. They've done well on their travels so far this season, Arsenal in the Champions League. Going to PSV, scoring 7, scoring 5 at Sporting, going to the Bernabeu and winning. So they can do well. They can score goals away from home, and they're going to absolutely need to do that next Wednesday night. Okay, player ratings wise, it was just one of those days where there was. I thought Miles Lewis-Skelly was Arsenal's best player. I thought he was very good. Obviously, could have got a really good assist if Martinelli had tucked his finish away. But not just that. I just thought on the whole he had a really good night again, Miles Lewis-Skelly. But it was just a night of kind of average or slightly below average performances from Arsenal. And when you sort of you put that together as a collective and a team against a side like PSG, you're always going to kind of struggle to get the result you want. I gave David Raya a 7, made one really good save in the first half from Doué, wasn't it? And they had to hit the follow-up on the post. Hit the post with a follow-up, but I think it was Fabian Ruiz, but I think it would have been offside had he have scored. So yeah, I gave Raya a 7. I gave Timber a 6. Timber really struggled in that first 25 minutes against Kvaratskhelia, who's just a wonderful player. I said it at the time when he was available. When I say he was available, I don't really think he was available. I think PSG had done so much of the groundwork that when Napoli agreed to let him go in January, that PSG were always going to be the club that signed him. But you sort of look at him and just think, oh, what I'd do for him in an Arsenal shirt. And he gave Timber a real problem, especially for the first 20, 25 minutes. Again, I thought Timber stood up to it pretty well and came back and got on top at times after that. But yeah, the first 25 minutes was the most difficult I've seen Timber given in terms of performance. So I gave him a 6. Saliba I gave a 7, made one brilliant tackle on Hakimi in the second half. Kivior was okay, gave him a 6. As I said, Lewis-Skelly, my man of the match from an Arsenal point of view, gave him an 8. Rice I gave a 7. You know, the suspension to Thomas Partey, it did have a big impact on how Arsenal played, I think, last night, because I would have just loved to have seen Rice be able to attack and drive towards the box more than he could yesterday, because he was having to play in that number 6 role. That took a big part of his game away. And I think that did have a big impact. I thought he did well, though, to be fair. So I gave him a 7. Odegaard, I gave a 4. It was just a night. It was just not a good night for Martin Odegaard. He couldn't get into the game at all. He just never looked like really influencing. It's kind of the story of his season so far. Really disappointing night for Arsenal's captain, and yeah, I think you need sort of your best players to really stand up in moments in games like this. And Odegaard, unfortunately, it just didn't happen for him yesterday, and it hasn't happened for him for much of the season. And he needs to sort it out. Arsenal need to find a way of getting him back to his best. Whether it is just going to be a rest over the summer, and we're hopefully going to see him back to his best next season. You know, fingers crossed. But they need to find a way of him being able to influence games more, because at the moment they're kind of passing him by at times, not always, but at times. And last night was one of those times where he just never really looked like he was going to be any sort of influence on that match. I gave him a 4. Marino, I gave a 6. Saka, I gave a 5. I thought he struggled against Nuno Mendes. Mendes played very, very well, as he did against Salah in the game in the 2 ties against Liverpool. Ridiculous that Saka was penalised in the first half for that when he tackled Nuno Mendes over on the right wing. You know, perfect tackle, no foul whatsoever, and then he's driving completely free into the penalty area, and for some reason a foul gets given, and Saka kicks the ball away and gets a yellow card. I'm not surprised he was frustrated at that, because that was a real big opportunity there for Arsenal that for some reason was taken away by the linesman flag, who called a foul. It's never a foul in a million years. But yeah, I gave him a 5. Trossard I thought was pretty lively. Martinelli I gave a 6 as well. Maybe that's pushing it for Martinelli. Maybe he should have been a 5. If Saka's a 5, maybe Martinelli should be a 5. In fact, I am changing that to a 5 rather than a 6 for Martinelli. So I'm giving Saka and Martinelli a 5. Trossard I thought was okay. I gave him a 6. Only a couple of subs for Arsenal. Ranieri coming on and Ben White coming on as well, sort of in the last 5-10 minutes or so. So I'm not going to give either of those a mark. So those are my player ratings from last night's game. Raya 7, Timber 6, Saliba 7, Kivior 6, Lewis-Skelly 8, Rice 7, Odegaard 4, Marino 6, Saka 5, Martinelli 5, and Trossard 6. Okay, we got lots of reaction from you guys, so I'll pull quite a few of them together, and I'm going to share them over the next few minutes or so. So here's some of them. Ollie says the performance was just as disappointing as that Tifo. Yeah, that was not great. It didn't look particularly brilliant, and I wonder if the club are regretting that decision now. You know, they obviously rejected or couldn't find the time to go with any of the sort of fan suggestions. That was the sort of message that was relayed to the fans who were in contact with the club about doing something, and they went with the big Canon sort of ceiling to a floor thing. And I'm not sure I'll call it a Tifo, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great at all. Ollie continues by saying the early goal really did kill us a little. We looked absolutely shocked, felt we did get back into the game, should have equalised, not watched it back yet, but Martinelli's chance in the first half, I felt at the time was just down to a great save. Just very deflated. It was like the last game of last season versus Everton when we heard City had scored early. Mantele says, team didn't turn up, but neither did the fans. I understand the disappointment at the start, but that doesn't excuse how flat the atmosphere was coming through the TV. Then you see empty seats start appearing at 80 minutes. And that felt like a knife to the heart. You'd never believe that was our first Champions League semi-final in 16 years. Again, a lot of the players weren't at their best, but it was difficult to see them having to G up the crowd. See that despite it only being a conference league, Declan Rice was the only one with the experience of knowing the determination it takes to get through these games, even when you're not at your best. It's not over, but we all need a serious step up. And Anura said, hi, Charles. Thanks for your great content. What are your thoughts on Arteta not acknowledging the huge gap that was visible between PSG and Arsenal? We were outmuscled by the passing by a mile. I thought we had a few chances. We easily could have ended 2 or 3 down. I just don't think there was a big gap. I think there was a big gap for the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes. No doubt about that. PSG were brilliant and Arsenal couldn't really get near them. But then I thought the game settled down and I didn't think there was a huge gap then. Yes, they had a couple of chances very, very in those final few minutes, final sort of 10 minutes or so. But yeah, I thought Arsenal closed that gap after the first 20, 25 minutes. And it was fairly even. I think the stats sort of back that up as well. So I'm not sure Arteta really needed to acknowledge the huge gap. I'm not sure there was one. Brian says, hi, Charles. Only at half-time. Partey was a massive loss. When he comes back, it will free up Rice. I'm confident we can turn it around. We know PSG are very like Liverpool. They try to blow you away out the doors. If it doesn't happen, they run out of gas and can be got at. Fingers crossed, that is correct. Femi says, very disappointing game last night. PSG were better than us. I hope you speak about Odegaard because he is not stepping up as we expect him to. I thought he stayed too long on the pitch. You could see Saka trying things. Martinelli also. Even Trossard did better in the second half, but I can't remember anything Odegaard tried all game. Really disappointing. He's the captain. He needs to step up more onto the second leg. I hope the boys do the same as the girls did. Beverly says, I know that you won't read this. Why wouldn't I read this? I am reading it, Beverly. But Martin Odegaard is not what he used to be before his injury. I don't know why, and it's upsetting to see him as a shadow of his former self. I hope Arteta starts Ethan in the return leg, has Odegaard as backup on the bench. No, I'm not hating on our captain, but his performances lately have been rather shoddy at best. Fingers crossed that next season he picks up what he was prior to the injury. Yeah, I would be shocked if Arteta doesn't start Odegaard against PSG in the second leg. I mean, he will. He's not going to start one area ahead of Odegaard. But I agree. I've already spoken about it, that he wasn't good enough last night when you really, really needed your big players to step up in those sort of high pressure, high tension games. And it just didn't happen for him last night. And I think Arsenal suffered as a result in the final third. Got a few more here. Casey Lundy says, how many more bitter pills do we need to swallow before we see Arsenal actually win a major trophy, Charles? When it's do or die, it always seems that we crumble under the pressure every time. So gutted. Chances of us going through are now so slim. Charlie says, Partey's stupidity at the Bernabeu cost us big time. The formula worked so well against Real, was too badly affected by his absence. There were a few times that Rice drove through midfield and the PSG midfielders couldn't stop him. But unfortunately, we didn't see enough of that because he was deeper. Also, the need to start Trossard left us very light of attacking options off the bench. It's only half time. We can do it next week, but it's going to take a miraculous effort. And ideally, our captain will actually turn up next week. Not for the first time in a big game. He was missing last night. Norris says, hi, Charles. I don't think it was a disaster. I think we have got more chance in the second leg. Partey has been brilliant this season. Get him back in, then move Rice back to where he is and move Marino better to where he is better. 1 goal down at half time isn't bad. After 10 minutes, I was pretty sure we'd be shipping 3 or 4. And finally, Ryan says, thought it was a horrible performance from the referee, but we never really turned up. Second to every ball for the most part. Not having Partey was so big. Martinelli just has to score the chance Skelly put so perfectly on a plate for him. Difficult one at the back post from Saka's cross. And maybe a half chance forcing a good save from the Trossard effort. Other than that, we were fairly useless, I thought. Hard to choose many people who had a good game. I know we conceded early, but thought the atmosphere was poor for the most part. Big mountain to climb. And finally, Jordan says, very disappointed with our performance. PSG was good, but I felt we were so poor. Obviously, in the stadium, you had a better view of the game, Charles. But watching it from home, the number of misplaced passes was unacceptable. Thought Timber struggled a lot at first, but got better. MLS was assured. And apart from that, I struggled to say much good about anyone else. Not sure if Saka was 100% fit or if Nuno Mendes marked him really well. Just seemed like he didn't contribute too much. The women's team have taught us anything, though. The tie isn't over. We need to be significantly better in Paris and probably have to hope PSG get complacent or have an off day. Come on, you Gunners. So thank you very much for that, Jordan, and everyone else who got in touch to give me your thoughts on the game. I'm sure you're very, very disappointed, like we all were, at full time. So I appreciate you coming on and leaving your comments. So that's about it. There's not really much more to say than that. A disappointing night, not the video I wanted to do today. I wanted to come on here and speak glowingly about another fabulous Arsenal win in the Champions League. It hasn't happened. It's a defeat. It is only half time. There is another game to go. We'll see what happens in Paris next week. But for today, that's it from me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.